My problem is now your problem. My best friend does park maintenance, habitat restoration in an urban park. She finds all sorts of wild stuff, including drugs, drug paraphernalia, and occasionally hypodermic needles. There used to be a city task force that would come collect them, but it was discontinued. My friend would pick them up and dispose of them as safely as possible to reduce risk for park users. Eventually, she decided to ask the building manager, not her supervisor, but the person in charge of the facilities for the building she works out of, to install a sharps container in the bathroom, which park users have access to. He refused on the grounds that it would encourage drug use. Counter-arguments to the point were unsuccessful, as was pointing out that not having a sharps container endangered her and the custodians who took out the trash. So, she started bringing the needles to him whenever she found one, and asking him to dispose of them. It only took about 5 needles before he installed a sharps container in the bathroom. That's how you stick it to him. As someone who has had to do various injections while away from home, every public bathroom should have a sharps container, especially restaurants and places like parks where someone eats or spends a lot of time at. For those that use insulin, most people will just put the cap back on and throw it in their container when they get home. But sometimes you lose it and now you're carrying around an unprotected needle. And homeless people need a place to dispose of their needles. They're inexpensive and you won't need to replace it often unless you're a high-traffic area like an airport or major park. Tip for anyone that loses their cap: put the needle in an empty plastic bottle, preferably a rigid one. Wouldn't want to encourage insulin use. For some people, the only way to get them to understand that something is a real problem is to make it their real problem. This applies in so many contexts. I work in urban parks myself. Not sure where this is located, but for my municipality, sharps containers in bathrooms ended up not working well. We still try, but they end up being destroyed and needles stolen. My boss even installed a heavy-duty one encased in a thick cage. Didn't matter. Still destroyed. Diabetic. Not on insulin now, but I was during all 3 pregnancies. It is always great to see sharps containers in public restrooms. It never occurred to me to use heroin instead of insulin. Maybe I should have tried? It doesn't encourage drug use, it encourages safe disposal of drugs. If people are going to shoot up in a park bathroom, they're going to do it no matter what, might as well make it safer. Afterthought. Also safer for anyone who is diabetic or needs regular shots. So, he got the point. I'm gonna say this one time, with large letters, so those in the back can read it. 2. Harm reduction and mitigation for a society does not, and never has, increased negative individual behavior. If you want less people doing drugs in that area, open free clinics nearby. Treat it as the disease it is. You have an outbreak, get healthcare workers there to help treat the disease. If you don't have that level of control and can't get the government to act, you mitigate the harm to everyone else as best you can. Thank you, OP, for dealing with this sensibly and directly. Tell your manager, if he wants less drug use, to use some of his power to push for a couple nurses from a free clinic to hang out on occasion and hand out literature that'll be left there, and just to answer questions. Save one life. Save the world entire. You get one person killing themselves into a program and you've done more good for this world than most have in their lifetime. Hi there. I'm a community health worker and I primarily work with IV drug users and have lots of experience with harm reduction and needle disposal. Here are some really important tips if you ever come across a needle. Never try to recap a needle that is not your own if you see a syringe. Assume that it still contains a needle. Assume that all needles are contaminated. If you get stuck, pricked by a needle, call your doctor or go to urgent care ASAP. You will want to start preventive medication as soon as possible, because the sooner you start it, the more effective it will be. Never put a needle in the recycling or loose in a trash can, because someone else could get stuck by it. And on that note, here is how to safely dispose of a needle. Never pick up a needle with your bare hands. Ever. Also assume that any needle you see is contaminated. Instead, pick up needles with a pair of tongs. You can get tongs that are specifically made for trash, litter pickup. But you can also use a normal pair of kitchen tongs just as well. Before you pick up a needle, identify a container that you will put it into. A sharps container is best. But if you don't have one, you can use another thick, heavy-duty plastic container that can be capped. Something like an old laundry detergent bottle. Not thin plastic like a milk jug. Never use a can. Thin plastic that can be punctured. Or a glass container. It could shatter. Open up the container before you pick up the needle. And also, it's best to label your DIY sharps container with something like needles or sharps do not recycle. Gently use the tongs to place the needle into the container. Place the needle with the sharp end facing down into the container first. Do not fill the container all the way. You don't want there to be any needles close to your hand when you screw the cap on. Tightly cap your container. Dispose of your container. In some states you can dispose of it in the trash, not recycling. But it's best to look this up first. If you can't dispose of it in the trash, you can see where your local sharps disposal program is. What kind of mindfuckery is that? That's like saying installing trash cans will encourage littering.
Sharp idea.
The building manager is a prick. Harm reduction does not equal encouragement! Exclamation mark! Exclamation mark! He just took a little needling to understand where she was coming from. Are y'all from the Dad Jokes sub? I inject chemo every week. Got a Sharps container for free directly from Sharps. Come in a special box with instructions on how to pack it up safely and send it back to them for free. Then they send you a new one for free. Been doing this for years. Great service. Sharps containers encourage drug use? That's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. That's one way to poke the bear. Not to put too fine a point on it, but OSHA probably would have had something to say about it.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Ericast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.